We become what we repeatedly do. Sean Covey. My friends, you want to become a trader? Then practice trading each and every day. 10 to 15 minutes, that is all we ask. And what do we see markets doing today? We see stocks and gold up, Bitcoin and bonds down. Let's jump first into the S&P 500. We have finished drawing the latest two-day candle. Started on Tuesday, ended on Wednesday. And it is a green up candle pushing through the weekly trend line. We see 1, 2, 3 days of up movement. Again, hasn't gone all the way to the top of our loss band, but it is getting there. And again, this is a decent, it is a small candle, but again, the fact that it has broken our trend line, and as we let's zoom in on it and take a close look. You can see that there is, let me bring this out, stretch it out some. You can see there is a bit of movement on the bottom of that as well as on the top. So it is a type of spinning top. It does have some down movement on there still, just barely breaking that prior weekly trend line, but the candle body itself is outside the trend line. Tends to mean that that's going to keep going. Doesn't mean it has to. It could turn around, but because the candle body is higher than last week's, again, we can see that now that we've gotten through Wednesday, we're a little over half the size of the prior candle, so we may very well, by the time we get to the end of the week, have it be at least average or above average volume. So we, of course, are watching that very closely. I, of course, already pulled my trade when we started the violation there on Tuesday morning, and we went ahead and pulled our trade out, minimizing any loss at all after making the 1.62% on half that trade in the down move. Now, what do we see going on with the Qs? The same kind of thing, 3 days of up movement. Again, as we look at this weekly chart, we see a little wick on the bottom. Again, has pushed through, sitting right there on that weekly trend line. If we connected, of course, that prior candle, which was a weaker spinning top, so not all that surprising on the NASDAQ 100 because of the weakness that was showed last week. We would be well above that trend line. We pulled that trade too. You could have had a chance to pull it here when we saw that inherent weakness that is reflected in last week's candle, where things really popped up on Thursday morning. Then rolled over Thursday afternoon, down Friday morning, indecision on Friday afternoon, up Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, up 0.56%. We, of course, now, again, what's so fascinating about what's happened in the last couple of days is prior to that, with just all this up movement for weeks, not a lot to learn there. You feel like a genius because you just keep making money in your practice trade, but you don't learn much. This is something for you to take away as you watch, because we saw the half-day chart move up and then it moved down, but it didn't continue the down move. We had a lot of indecision here, piercing, of course. Now, we'd already pierced it twice before, but a lot of indecision here where it backed back down. Another indecision here, and things took off. We can see with that super high volume, it bottomed, and then when it took off again, not likely to do anything but keep going up. Probably not going to do that much of a seesaw for you with the violation of that weekly trend line. That's what makes using the weekly trend line on the 2-day and half-day charts so powerful. So we will be waiting toward the end of the week, at the end of the week, to see how green this candle is if this move continues, and potentially now turning around and getting into another up move. Haven't confirmed that yet, but that's what we're thinking. So go ahead and put that in your show notes. Now, what do we see going on with 20-year bonds? They were down a little bit for the day, 0.10%. What we basically see is just a slowdown in that up movement. Do have a minor penetration on the 2-day chart of the weekly trend line. And of course, on the weekly chart, we've got that green candle. If we zoom into it, you can see on this weekly candle that, well, maybe there's a little bitty wick at the bottom. Not much, but you can see where the candle body's clearly outside what had been a very strong trend line. So we will keep that in mind as the week continues to move along. We are in the red territory at this point, about halfway through it, after having made a 2.45% profit on our practice trade in the first half of that move. And again, down a little bit for the day. What is your decision? Have you already pulled out? Are you staying in at this point, hoping to see it roll back over? If you are, why? How do you judge the fact that we've jumped outside the trend line, that the 2-day has finished just a little above it, but the candle body not? Do you think there's some inherent weakness here with the lower volume that we see in the up move? What do you think? Why are you doing what you're doing? Making sure you analyze things and you write them down is important. You might say, Tom, why? What is that going to do for me other than give me something to write about? Well, because every stock and ETF, they have their own personalities. And as you analyze things and make decisions, there are things that you'll put in your show notes that you can refer back to later. And it becomes your own little almanac that you can go back to and say, hey, when this happened last time, when I had a nice strong down move on 20-year bonds and they popped up, broke my weekly trend line, ended up with a 2-day candle, lower volume, smaller candle than some of the down moves when it started to move up, didn't settle outside the weekly trend line, and then what? Continued to ascend or broke down very quickly thereafter. Again, things for you to write down, think about, and learn from. And then making rules that you can apply later to those individual stocks, individual ETFs that have become those that you trade most often. So they all have their own personalities. That's why we say you got to be in the market each and every day, 10 to 15 minutes to learn those things. And you learn by doing, by practice trading. Remember, not a stock calling service. We're an education firm. Now, let's look at gold, up 0.25%. And of course, gold has clearly moved through that weekly trend line on the 2-day chart and well on the half-day chart and has now surpassed our loss band there. So the thing that made gold different than bonds and than the S&P 500 NASDAQ 100s, we never took our profit here because we didn't quite reach the bottom. We got awfully close on a couple of occasions here and here, but never really hit that loss band. So once it boomed up and narrowed out, that's when we're looking for every reason to jump out. And of course, we had them when we particularly had that move that went just above into the negative. We see that on the 2-day chart. We see it in the morning on the 23rd, Wednesday, the 23rd of August. Get out time, a good time to get out. You can't make it on all trades, but you make it on all you can. Now, let's look lastly at Bitcoin pulling back some, 2.48%. But of course, as we look at things, we saw that big move up yesterday, 7+%, and then backing off just under the weekly trend line. Isn't that interesting? We'll keep an eye on Bitcoin, see where it's going to go. That is where we are, folks, at the end of the day. We so appreciate you being with us. Always love to hear from you. We do have the website up and going. It had broken down on us with some heavy virus infection, but we got it to the doctor and got it fixed, so it's back up. We do appreciate you being with us, Patreon members. I'll be recording your charting cryptos, commodities, and currencies and your 3-wave trades. Be checking the Patreon page for that. God bless, my friends. All the best.